Hi guys, I really like the service Airbnb. I have used it 9 times, and the 2 cities I've used it in is Vancouver and San Francisco. I've used it for vacations or personal travel and also business travel, such as attending conferences and going for testing and other business that took me away from my home city at the time. I just thought I'd do a video about my experience with Airbnb and any tips if you want to try out Airbnb. I really like Airbnb because I'm not really a hotel person. I don't sleep very well in hotels. They feel very sterile and usually pretty noisy because you're in close quarters, and I just don't feel comfortable in hotels, and so I like that homely feeling you get in an Airbnb. Usually they're kind of cute, or it just feels more like home, so I just sleep a lot better and I have a better time. Also, you're going to be in neighborhoods that aren't necessarily where hotels are located. Going to Vancouver or San Francisco, where I've been with Airbnb, you're not in the tourist center, you're kind of outside of that in the actual neighborhoods, and that means you get more the local restaurants and the local feel. But it's not necessarily that bad. You're usually by public transportation that can take you to the city center. Here are my tips on how to book an Airbnb and have a successful time. Of the 9 times I've stayed at Airbnb locations, I've never really had an experience where I was like, that was the worst idea ever. Definitely some have been better than others, but I think overall they've all been pretty great. My first tip, and anytime anyone wants to do Airbnb, this is what I say, is to read through the listing or the posting for the place thoroughly. So read through all the rules, look at the location, really plan out, first, is that location or neighborhood where the Airbnb is located, is that going to work for your travel plans? And 2, just look at the amenities. Is that going to work for you? Do you need Wi-Fi? Is there Wi-Fi? Is there a TV if that's important? Are there fridge, microwaves, some kind of access? What's the bathroom like? Usually they have photos. I would look through the photos. There are also different types of Airbnb. So sometimes it will be like a mother-in-law kind of off the main house. Sometimes it might be like a basement in the house, so you kind of have your own private entrance. Sometimes it might be a shared entrance and you have a private room. So it's really important to look through the listing and only look at listings that you feel comfortable. I'm not really one that wants to have a room and like a shared space with someone I don't know, so I really look for private entrances or those kind of listings where you're kind of separate from the owner. You might still have interactions with the host, but you're not like in their space, because that doesn't make me feel comfortable. But I've had plenty of situations where I'm in a converted basement with a separate entrance, or like a mother-in-law cottage room situation. So it's usually pretty easy to find those types of situations. Another tip I kind of live by is to only pick places that have had previous reviews. Sometimes you'll see this really great place and maybe the price is kind of cheaper than you thought it would be and there's no reviews. To me, that's a red flag. That means no one from Airbnb has stayed there, because after you stay, you are highly encouraged to leave a review, and the host leaves a review for you. So it's kind of an exchange, and it's a way for future hosts to say, oh, I definitely want this person, you know, being at my place. Like, they've had a great track record. So same as the host reviews you, you're supposed to review the host, and you can look for things like how accurate was the description, and you want to read through these comments of the reviews. They're not long, sometimes they're just a few sentences, and see if that is matching up with the listing description that's written by the host. If there is large disparities between the two, I would be aware of that listing. But if everything just kind of seems the same and there's no large disparities, then I feel comfortable booking that place. For price, I usually have ranged in the San Francisco, Vancouver area from $50 to $150. This, of course, depends on location, time of year, amount of people staying with me, and how early I was able to book that reservation. In location, you know, San Francisco is a fairly expensive city, and Vancouver is a fairly expensive city. Sometimes the locations might have been further out from downtown, but they still work great because of the awesome public transportation in both of those cities. Sometimes I booked a place only a few weeks in advance, and other times I booked a place months in advance. If you're booking months in advance, there's going to be more options and you're going to be able to pick more than if you're booking it a few weeks in advance, especially if that's a busy weekend because you're going for a big event, a lot of the Airbnbs will already be booked up. You can go into much more expensive places, but I'd say the minimum is probably about $50 a night. You might get cheaper in cities, but a lot of those places won't have reviews or will seem just not the place I want to stay. Another tip is if you have any questions about the booking, either about the place itself or about the neighborhood or how easy it is to get to other places, contact the host before booking. They have a great system where you can message through the Airbnb site. Hosts will usually answer any questions you have because they want you to stay with them and be happy with your choice. I remember going to a conference in San Francisco. I contacted a host and say, how easy is it to get from your place to the convention center? Because knew I had to do that each day. And it turns out there was an express bus on the corner, so that was a great place to stay, and really valuable information learned from that. And also with check-in and check-out times. Sometimes they will have a check-in or check-out time listed on the listing, but you can ask, like, is it okay if I plan to come, at this time, would that work? Even though your check-in time is posted at 3 p.m., is it okay if I check in between 7 and 8 p.m.? Stuff like that. It's good to work that out before you actually book the place. When arriving, if you're either really, really early, like an hour more early, or you're arriving late, even I'd say 15 minutes late from the time you said you'd be there, contact the host. You can do this either through the app or once you are booked, you get a phone number. So I'd say just to be courteous. Once we accidentally arrived an hour early, just from a miracle. So we contacted the host and said, is it okay if we check in now? I mean, we don't have to, and she actually was home, so that worked. I usually give a window of about an hour of when I plan to check in. I think all around a tip is just to be a good guest. The more you are communicating with the host with anything you might need, whether arrival times or any other thing going on, the better your stay is going to be, and the better the host is going to provide services or help or just a lovely chat. I've had hosts, give me chocolate and other treats and be really nice, and so I just say be a good guest and you usually will get a good experience in return. That's my experience with Airbnb and some tips on how to utilize the service. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and that's all for today. Bye!